everybody, Analia Raven here. Welcome to In the Mist by Analia. And I know I haven't been on YouTube in a really long time, however, life happens, but I'm back now and I'm ready to do the YouTube Pagan Challenge letter B. Last time on A I did art for pagans or art and magic, and now I'm on letter B. And since I don't really talk about myself that much, I figure what better way to get to know me than know where I've been. So I'm going to do the books that I was reading when I was a wee little pagan or wee little witch or Wiccan or I don't even know where I started off as, because I know it wasn't just strictly Wiccan. I was all over the place. But one of the books that I do not possess currently is by Silver Ravenwolf, and it's called Teen Witch. It's pretty much about the basics of Wicca, and it's been so long because I started reading that in 8th grade, and before that, other books I don't have with me are those, those little spell books that are like that you can get around Valentine's Day or Halloween, where it just says spells or good spells, and you open the book and it comes with this little kit and everything with some string and a candle, and you got your little tiny book that's about this thick of spells, and it pretty much just gives you ideas on what to do. And those were the thing. I think it was red, and that was when I was like in elementary school. So I've been practicing witchcraft for a very long time. However, going into my high school days, the books that I have them sitting right beside me, the books that I was really into were, I tore the cover off of one. This is not the cover, I had to put it in here, but this book, I was really into the Avalonian tradition, Priestess of Avalon, Priestess of the Goddess, by Kathy Jones. And I still reference this book, especially for holidays, because it is a very woman-based spirituality, and that's what my channel is pretty much all about. It's about me and my craft as in woman spirituality. And this book pretty much goes through three spirals, and just kind of like I'm going with the Reformed Congregation of the Goddess and Women's Theological Institute, we have 3 sections before we can get considered for ordination. And so this goes through 3 spirals. It talks about the Sabbats and practicing the Sabbats in a way that women would do with other women. So it was very nice to have that basis before I went into the Women's Theological Institute, even in high school. And yeah, and I found this at Half Price Books, because the only way you can get it is ordering it off of the Sisterhood of Avalon website. So I found this at Half Price Books when I was really needing it at the time. And I was also big into Druidry. Another book I don't have with me is by Isaac Bonewitz, and it's on, I think it's called The Solitary Druid or something like that. But I did pick up Robert Lee Ellison, aka Skip, The Solitary Druid, and I read this forwards and backwards. This is not the copy I read forwards and backwards. When I had a mentor early in my high school days, and I'm talking freshman year, I borrowed her books, and so I picked this up way back when, and I just haven't flipped through it. I think I might flip through it, but it talks about the daily devotions and living life as a druid, and it's a very interesting read. And I don't subscribe to Druidry now. I think it's structured. It's really structured for me, and I'm a bit of an eclectic, so but yeah, some of the books that I read. Another one that I was really big into was Green Witchcraft by Anne Mora, and I can never pronounce her magical name, Almiel, something like that. This is the 3rd one. I did have 1 and 2, but when I was moving back and forth to college and everything, I let somebody borrow it who was interested in the craft, and they never gave them back to me, so I have to pick those up. And also her grimoire that she wrote I had, and I let somebody borrow that and they never gave it back to me, so I have to rebuy those. But I do have the manual, and this one, it introduces the basic equipment of altars and the basic levels of the craft, and you know, it talks, this is how I got introduced to black mirror scrying, which I'm hoping to do a video on that soon. I did do a workshop at one of the gatherings, women's spirituality gatherings in Wisconsin, and about black mirror scrying. It was around Samhain, and so I'm hoping to put that into a video. I still have yet to rearrange that into a video format because it's in a PowerPoint format. And yeah, but this introduced me to black mirror scrying. It has, I don't want to say darker sort of rituals, but compared to all the other books I was reading at the time, it did have more shadow work involved in this particular one than her other ones. But it was very much into like the earthy sort of practice, and your altar is the earth, which I still subscribe to. I like going outside in nature and getting things out there. Of course, you know Scott Cunningham. Everyone in Wicca or witchcraft or paganism, or at least read about it, has heard of Scott Cunningham. He's a big Wiccan author, and this was one of the books that I had that I read and referenced a lot of the time, especially when it comes to the elements, earth, air, fire, and water. And I also saw it at the library. This is one of the first books I saw at the public library where I used to live as a high school student. So yeah, and this just has things how you can work with the elements, each element. And when I was in high school, I spent a month on each element, and I did its own page. And of course, I paired this book up with things on the internet. And Eden McCoy is another big Wiccan altar. Her advanced witchcraft was something that I picked up because I was done with the Wicca 101 and I wanted something more. I wanted to know how I can go deeper and take that further in my life. And this talked about psychic defense. This is how I learned how to make my first shields, so I don't pick up other people's stuff, or so other people, if they're throwing things at me, my shields would reflect that off of it. And then it had advanced divination practices. It talked about astral projection, and I just thought that would be really interesting to learn at the time. I'm planning on rereading it because I don't exactly know all that's in this particular book. So Advanced Witchcraft by Eden McCoy. Again, this is all what I read in high school. And what other one? And The Witch's Craft by Raven Grimassi I still have something. Oh, Working with Magic Mirrors. So I was referencing that with my Black Mirror Scrying workshop that I did. And this one is pretty much basic witchcraft, going further away from Wicca and going into actual witchcraft. So, and this is when I first realized that Wicca and witchcraft were really different, because witchcraft you don't need anything in the way of deities. You can just use the tools or whatever you need to get your work done, your magical work done. But in Wicca, it's more of the emphasis of the magic is more with the divine masculine, the divine feminine, whatever their names be called. And so this one introduced me into actual witchcraft. And sorry. Fine. Okay, sorry, that was my phone. Whoopsies. Ugh, don't have my signature coffee today, so oops. But that's life. We're all human, right? So witchcraft. And this one, not witchcraft or pagan based. However, I did pick this up in high school. This is at the end of my high school career. you know, senior year sort of thing. The Field Guide to Otherkin by Lupa, and it talks about other people feeling like they're other than human, or they people who believe in reincarnation feel like they were once something else, whether it be an animal and they reincarnated into a human, but they still feel that they still have like the feeling of being that other animal, whether it be senses or phantom limbs, and not even just animals. And also fae or fairy, people who think that a fae, it's hard to explain otherkin. I'll link my blog post about otherkin down below in the description and let you read that. But I guess I was feeling, because I don't know if you watched my introduction video, but I did say in my introduction video that I was a psychic vampire. And pretty much what psychic vampires are is they feed off of others' energy, life force energy, and not with, they don't do it just to everyone because they can, and they do it because there's something missing within themselves, or at least I do. I do it because I feel like there's something missing within my energy field that needs to be compensated for, so you will. I'll do a separate video on psychic vampirism in a little bit, but this book touches a little bit on psychic vampirism. And when I say a little bit, I mean like maybe less than a chapter or something. Yeah, I think it's less than a chapter. So that really helped me out, because at first, when I first read this book, I was thinking that maybe as an energy feeder, that I could be a fae, because everybody always said I had fae energy, and fae all about, like, even people who didn't even know me thought that I had fae energy about me. And so I was wondering, what the heck, where does that even come from? I don't even know what they're talking about. And they were talking about otherkin stuff. And that's a whole separate video I could talk about too, when I'm more prepared. But these are the books that I read when I was a young witch. And this book is when I got, not this book, this is the second one, but the Inner Temple of Witchcraft, I'm letting someone borrow, and I do know who's borrowing it, and they will give it back. Crossing my fingers, because I talked to them about it the other day. Anyway, but this is the second one. I brought this out so you guys could see. It's by Christopher Penczak, and the first one, the Inner Temple of Witchcraft, I bought my first year of college. So, not necessarily a baby witch, but still kind of learning. And the first one is about I would say Christopher Penczak kind of describes witchcraft in a scientific way, in my opinion, which kind of makes it more understandable. For people that aren't so, I don't want to say like magic-y woo-woos, but you know what I mean, like those people that, I'm one of the magic-y woo-woos, just so you know, so I can talk about it. The people that kind of think they don't need an explanation for everything, and how everything works. They just accept it, and sometimes I accept the magic happening. However, I do need an explanation, and Christopher Penczak gave that to me in a very scientific, dry sort of way that I like. Instead of explaining, oh, the divine grants your wishes and everything just falls into place because it's fate, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, he was very educated in his explanations, very scientific, and I love that about him. And Christopher Penczak was the only author, to my knowledge, that actually described witchcraft that way, in a realistic sort of way, instead of an introduction where it's just kind of stereotypical Wiccans, magical practitioners getting together in a circle and talking about the witch's pyramid and spiraling power and stuff. He actually talked about the laws of magic, how it worked, and it was just very scientific, and I liked that. It was just nice. And there were other books that I read that I don't have with me, and many different Druid books, and definitely the internet played a big part. However, books were the main thing for me growing up, learning about Wicca, witchcraft, and paganism. And also, there was this one book, it was called The Idiot's Guide to Witchcraft and Wicca. I referenced that a lot, and I think I got that in 8th grade. And I had a whole bunch of other divination books too, to build my Book of Shadows. I wish I had my first Book of Shadows that I created, because everything, all my books and all in my Book of Shadows was covered in duct tape, because I took them to school, and my parents, well, not my parents, but my dad was very on my grandmother's side with, being anti-Wicca and witchcraft is evil and yada yada, that crap. And so I had to duct tape all the covers so I was trying to be sneaky, okay? But it didn't work, and my books got thrown out into the trash, and so did my Book of Shadows. And so I had to get new ones and try to remember what I had, and it was really hard, so. But yeah, that's pretty much all about the books I used to read and what I learned from, and I definitely grew. Part of me went back to my roots, and part of me, which are like the green witchcraft and everything, and part of me definitely went to a more darker side of witchcraft. Not necessarily cursing, but more shadow work and more progressive, and learning more about Wicca, like actual Wicca, like Gardener's Age Wicca, instead of New Age Wicca. I mean, all Wicca is New Age, personally, to me, because Gardner created it, and it wasn't very long ago that he did so. However, but it was very different. It's still very different than what it is today, and had to have a better respect for Wicca because of that. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have for you so far, is books that I used to read when I was younger and how I learned about it. And those books still exist today, even those little spell books with like the kit and everything. I still walk through Barnes and Noble, and I could still see those around Halloween or Valentine's Day, especially Valentine's Day. Witches are big. Those love spell books are all over the place, if you know what I mean. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in to In the Mist by Nalia and this YouTube pagan challenge about my books that I used to read when I was a young witch. And have a awesome day or night or whatever part of the time zones you are in. Go forth.